Hello, I'm Christopher Lyle Simmons and you're in the IBA Bootcamp. This is video 3 of 3 for the IBA Review slideshow. This video is for reference. If you don't know much of the material, then please watch the video from the beginning all the way to the end. If there's only sections of the slideshow that you're unfamiliar with, use this video, just fast forward to the section that you're unfamiliar with and then listen to what I have to say. The information in the red is the most important. This is the information that is most likely to show up on your certification exam. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'll see you all at the end. All right, information technology professions. A PC technician installs, modifies, repairs hardware. This is someone who actually works on the real computers, right? These are people who know how to install new RAM, solve problems with fans. It's the person who actually can touch the computer. The help desk is different, right? These people are not touching your computer, but they can solve it remotely. So they kind of walk you through being able to open up your computer and solve problems with the hardware, or sometimes they'll tell you to uninstall, reinstall software or problems that are with the software and how to solve them. So a help desk doesn't touch your stuff and walks you through it. The PC technician is the person who actually touches hardware. Usually they know some stuff about software, but they don't really help you with it. An analyst is someone who just evaluates, right? An analyst will look at the system and decide the whole system, not just a computer, but let's say an entire network, like all the computers at the school and how they interact with each other. An analyst is someone who looks at that system and decides how it can operate more efficiently. Manager develops and implements plans. And this is like a project manager would be, we're opening a new school and we need to put a bunch of new technology in. The manager is the person who gathers all the people and has those people gather all the resources and makes sure that the plan to install all the computers in the new school takes place. So they're kind of in charge. The administrator is in charge of the manager. So let's say that there's several schools that have several managers that are installing new computer systems. Well, one person, the administrator, is in charge of all the managers, right? So that's the boss of those local bosses, right? A developer develops and builds and constructs. So that's like if there was new computer systems being developed somewhere, let's say like Apple is developing a whole new computer system for schools that integrates their new AR, they call it the Apple Glass is what the rumor is, for every student with a paired iMac and using iPads and all this stuff. That's what a developer would do. Then if a school district wanted to implement the developer's plan, they'd hire an administrator. The administrator would find managers for each school, and then the managers at each school would hire people to put the information or the computer systems together, run the wires, connect the computers, all that kind of stuff. A designer is a little different, right? A designer is different than the developer. They're the sort of the person that comes up with the big idea, right? The organization and appearance of certain things, like how pretty a computer will be and the general idea of how it would work. They don't necessarily do the guts, but they design how it would look and what it would function, right? The big thing to take away from here is they do the appearance, the way it looks. And a security manager, we have one at the school district that manages, when you go to a website and it blocks you, there's a person who's in charge of that blocking, right? They've hired a secondary company to go in and block certain websites. Well, the security manager is in charge of that protection. So to review, PC technician touches the computer, pulls out the guts, put new guts in. Help desks, you're on the phone, they walk you through it. They'll help you go and pull the guts out of your computer, but more likely they're walking you through software, uninstall, update operating system, that kind of thing. An analyst simply looks at systems and evaluates them. The manager is someone who will develop and implement a plan specifically at a site, but in general for anything. The administrator only manages the typically all the managers, right? The developer develops and builds, constructs. A designer, just keep in mind, has appearance, and security manager protects. Great. More that we need to know about information technology professions. Ontological, right? And you remember how I was saying how the administrators at the top, and then they hire a bunch of managers, and then below that you could even have a bunch of PC technicians that are working with the computers. This sort of chart is the ontological chart. It's to study how a particular part of a company called a domain is organized. So that would be like, we'll call it the computer systems at Palm Beach County Schools has an ontological system, a map, an ontological chart that shows the administrator at the top, and then a bunch of managers for each school site below that, and then a bunch of people who are working on the computers below that. You need to know this term domain, right? It's the part of the company. That system with someone in charge, and they're in charge of other people, and those people are in charge of other people. That domain can also be for like sales or manufacturing. Some big companies will have a sales department that has their own ontology. Another section that's about manufacturing, design, just administration, human resources. They all have this sort of chart. What you need to know about the holistic, the need to look at the organization as a whole to take care of the entire company and help all domestic or departments. So the idea is when an analyst comes in, they use an ontological chart to organize the company. That way they can look holistically. They can look at the whole thing and see where there's some overlap or some redundancy to make the entire company more efficient, right? They'll reroute who works for who and how, or they may remove entire departments or positions, right? That's why they look at it holistically. IT professions, continuing on, information technology professions. Which choice lists security-related ethical and legal issues that IT professions face? Privacy concerns, copyright and trademark issues, and encryption policies. That's kind of a big deal. You kind of need to know which of the following is considered a right of IT professions working at the help desk. The right is to receive clear, detailed objections and instructions so that they can provide the appropriate services and products to their customers. These questions, these three questions, which is the responsibility of the IT professional to plan and conduct services and product installations and a training in a manner that minimizes workflow interruption and downtime. I mean, there's not much for me to say about this. You just need to kind of read this. You need to see the difference between responsibility, which is to plan, and considered a right, which is to receive. And then the issues, see the difference? Black, where it says issues, privacy concerns, copyrights. The rights is to receive clear instruction, and responsibilities is the plan. So you can look at it like this. If you work in computers, some issues you might run, right? Information technology, you work in computers. Some issues you may face is like privacy problems, encryption, which means how it's like encoded as it's sent around so people don't steal stuff. So security ideas, copyright and trademark issues. Those are your issues. Rights that you have is that your company tells you exactly what you need to do, right? Because there's a lot of issues. You have a right to be told to receive clear information on what you need to do, right? How to treat your customers, what services to provide, that kind of thing. But you also have a responsibility, right? Your responsibility is to plan out how you're going to do things. You can't just expect, even though you have a right to have clear instructions, You have instructions on what you need to do, but your responsibility as an IT professional is to plan how to do those things, right? So you have these issues you can run into: privacy, copyright, encryption. Your company must tell you you have a right to receive clear directions. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And you have a responsibility on how to not do this, how to not do that, how to not do this, or how to do this, how to do this, how to do this, right? It's kind of heady, but I think it's important that you understand. Nice hair. Sorry, excuse me, professional. Project management. I have a statement of work. SOW. I myself have worked not just as a teacher, but I work inside the tech industry as an IT professional. And because I'm a subcontractor, I usually don't work for companies like Apple or Google or CIW, but I will occasionally do work for them. And when I do, usually they provide me with a statement of work. And this is a clear set of requirements that I need to meet in order to achieve completion of work and receiving pay, right? So in the tech industry, SOWs are really common. They have clear objectives, they usually have clear timelines, and on it will also be how much you get paid and that kind of thing, right? So requirements for each project task to ensure that the project objectives are met. The scope. On this statement of work, it'll say scope. And then generally it'll say what you need to achieve, right? You need to make a new certification exam for these objectives, that kind of thing, right? Or whatever it is. You need to design a certain piece of software that achieves this objective. That's the scope, what it needs to be. This thing is usually referred to as a project, and each statement of work may have multiple projects, and each project will have a defined time frame. You need to have this done by December 1st, this done by March 1st, you need to have this done by June 1st. Those projects or sections or units are part of, we have the scope, and in order to do that, you need multiple projects to be achieved, and that creates a time frame, the project. The task is usually the unit of work. Even though some projects inside a statement of work, you can call it a whole project. Like you need to create review questions, right? For CIW's IBA exam. Well, a task would be Chapter 1's review questions, Chapter 2's review questions, Chapter 3's review questions, and you can change those tasks. You can set timelines for individual units of work like that. You can say, I need to have, by December 15th, I need to have Chapter 1. December 20th, Chapter 2. And December 25th, Chapter 3, right? You can see how these tasks are done. Constraints. Now, they're the limits, right? And time, money, and scope. Those are the real things. And they call it the triangle, right? And so you put time, money, and scope on the side. And so if you increase the scope, typically, which is the amount of work that you expect to have on a statement of work, you have to increase the time that's allowed to do it, or you have to increase the money, which means you're going to hire more people to do it to get it done in the time frame, right? Because you can only do so much work in a time. If you reduce the scope, sometimes you'll reduce the money, or they may reduce the time but keep the money the same. Sometimes they need to reduce the money, so then you reduce the scope, which is the amount of work that you're going to do for the money that you're receiving. Sometimes they reduce the time. Well, that one's funny. When you reduce the time but you keep the scope the same, sometimes you have to increase the money because you need to hire more people. So these constraints on having a statement of work performed, a project completed, are dynamic based on how you modify them. The stakeholders are people who have influence, they have interest. When we talk about like CIW, if I was working for CIW and making a new certification exam for something different, not IBA, but let's say a new one, there's a bunch of people involved. Students who are going to take the test, teachers who are going to teach it, district people who are going to be administrating it, the industry, people who that certification would serve, right? Someone in the IT industry. You have federal people. You have the people who are trying to sell the product, right? Someone's trying to sell the CIW certification exam test to school districts. All these people who are involved are considered stakeholders. All right, we're moving along. Data modeling. Determine the requirements that a database must fulfill in order to function properly for an organization. Okay. So the way that this works, the database's ability to process, the data modeling. Let's say I am a school district and I can collect any data that I want on my students, right? I can have their age, I can have their FSA scores, I can have all kinds of data about these individual students. But does a school district really need to know what eye color you have? Probably not, right? In order to find the information and better serve its population, you model the data that you're required to have. You put in parameters of what information you need in order to really achieve your goal, right? Do you need to know if that person's left-handed or right-handed at the school district? No. But does it help to know what educational level their parents have? Absolutely. If someone's had a background where they've gone through and they have a doctorate in something, they're more likely to help the child with homework than someone who doesn't even have a third grade education, right? And that doesn't mean that's not always necessarily true, but it helps with data modeling, right? The percentage chance that those bits of data will assist are higher, and that's why they create that data. When we talk about computer data modeling, and we're talking about information that's coming in from, like, let's say, social media in order to help sell a certain product to a certain demographic, well, that's some crazy data modeling, right? Things that you would think don't influence your desire to buy a certain product. In data modeling, the people who do this really know that maybe there is information. Maybe whether you're right-handed or left-handed really will decide if you're going to buy a certain kind of mouse, right? It's weird. All right, let's continue on. So here we are back inside project management. If I were working for CIW, let's say like I have, the assignment that I had is the appointment of resources to a unit of work, right? So the assignment that needs to be done is a certain section. Here's what you're going to do, your appointment of resources to a unit of work. You're going to create this practice exam, or this, you're going to create this activity. You're in charge of the activities. Those are the assignments related to a unit of work, and they're the resources that have been done. So they say, okay, Simmons, you're going to do it. You're going to use this computer because you have this information. That's the assignment. A SWOT analysis is like when they look at their team, right? So let's say it's me, and it's Mr. Nichols, and it's Mr. Silverman. And we're all put together, and we're going to be coming up with a new practice exam for CIW for a new thing that they're doing. Not IBA or SDA, but something new, right? They're going to look at our strengths, they're going to look at our weaknesses, and they're going to see how we work together as a team, right? So one of us knows a little bit about this, but not anything about this. Well, the other person knows everything about this, but not anything about that. And this person's really in charge of, well, just being in charge, right? So they'll build a team based on a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities of the team that work together in order to decide what assignment they'll receive, right? Because this team is going to be really good, not necessarily in writing because of their SWOT analysis. They won't be good at making a practice exam, but they'd be really good at making a practice activity. We're going to assign them the activity to do based on the SWOT analysis. And a Gantt chart. These things are crazy. When you work in a big project and they release the Gantt chart, it's basically a giant chart with every unit of work laid out in sort of a timeline. And as the timeline goes along, you can see that here's when the unit of work will begin, and here's when it's been projected to end. Here's another one that lays over. Here's the team that's associated. It's a big visual thing that shows the project tasks and the task duration, and it's usually has a beginning and it goes all the way to an end, and you can see the tasks as they move along. And when there's a live Gantt chart, it shows people who get done early, that maybe start a certain unit of work. That whole team will transfer over and start another unit of work early. Or there's people who are late and how they have to reorganize what they were supposed to start next. They may give it to another team who got done early, right? That's the big part of project management. Mind-boggling. There's a bunch of phases for project management, right? The initial, where you create your SWOT, you create a Gantt chart, you include the goals, the problems you need to resolve, you plan it out, and then you start doing it, right? So you got your initial, the needs analysis, the planning, where you're kind of putting it all together, getting your team, hiring your team, doing some more SWOT, adjusting the Gantt, executing. You start doing it, and people are early, you adjust the Gantt. They're late, you adjust the Gantt. And that is done in the controlling phase. And then closing, generally closing, even though it's not here on this particular chart, closing is reflection. If you're a project manager, you look at all the data that you've collected, how successful you were at completing your project, and then you analyze it so that you can adjust the next project that you manage. You've learned from some of the challenges as well as some of the opportunities that you had from one project. You can bring that information on to the next, right? And that's what the closing section is. IT professionals like yourself, once you pass this cert, you're literally certified as an IT professional. Myself, we all go through different types of training, right? And right now, there's things called a webinar. And webinar is something that we're sort of mimicking with this Google Classroom, right? Right now, it's not live yet. When we go in next week and we have some Google Meets, those are going to be live, right? Generally, they're going to be one way. I may say, hey, let's all talk together at once, but I'm going to have you guys most likely turn off your microphones and your cameras so that my microphone and camera can come in clearly to everybody. And then I'm just going to kind of train you guys. I'm going to give you some information live, and then I'll turn you back on, but it probably won't be interactive. That's a webinar, right? It's live, but it's one way. I'm just talking, you're just sitting there listening, and it's for training. A webcast is what you're looking at right now, right? It's web-based, it's video only. You can repeat, fast forward, you can look at it later. That's a webcast. A web conference is when we do a full-blown Google Meet. And we're going to do a Google Meet when we're taking the CERT exam. When we take the CERT exam, you're going to be on the line with me, Mr. Nichols. There may be another third person that's on there. You're going to find out more about that when we have my webinar about how the testing is going to go. But the web conference is really when everybody's interacting. I'm able to grab a hold of your computer, and I'm going to be able to put my password into your computer. It's going to be pretty wild. That's a web conference, fully interactive. So webinar, it's live, but you're not involved. You sit there and you get there. And I'm sure when you guys have done some of those and you can turn off your camera and you're sitting there looking at your phone, right? Maybe you're looking at your phone right now. Are you? All right. And then webcast is what this is. You can stop it, start it. It's not live. Web conference is it's interactive. You and I can go back and forth. And we have other people involved, and there's file sharing and polls and slideshows, and you share your screen, that kind of thing. All right. Awesome. If you've watched all three of these videos, thumbs up. You've just gone through about an hour and a half of material. If you haven't looked at video number 1 or 2, go ahead and do that. But try not to do all 3 videos all in one setting or even in one day. Kind of break up the information. That's pretty much it. On Wednesday, we're going to take a qualifier. On Thursday is when we're going to take the cert for those who qualify. I'll see you all on Tuesday and Wednesday when we'll be doing some Google Meet. Have a wonderful weekend. See ya. Bye.